had my fair share of experiences in the past. I'm looking for someone who's reliable, constant, requires little maintenance, dependable, and who has a good financial prospect.
I want somebody with a high potential, someone who can sustain my feelings, not only now but in the future as well.
I haven't had much luck with this sort of thing. I just wish I knew how to change myself to make myself more prosperous in my line of work. Wait, are we talking about love or sustainable farming?
These farmers all have one thing in common: wanting to have a farm that is sustainable for the future. But what is sustainable farming? According to Dunphy et al. 2000, sustainability is implementing practices that do not compromise the integrity of the natural environment, yet still meets the demand of the current and future generations. According to Guardian 1997, 62% of Australia's land use is agriculture, including dry and irrigated agriculture and livestock grazing.
Essentially, different types of soils have different structures, textures, and mineral contents. Soils that make up Australia are naturally poor in minerals and saline. Australia's farming and grazing pastures lie on arid and semi-arid areas. The main soil types that Australia is located on are tendosol, sodosol, candesol, vertisol, and rudisol.
From clearing native vegetation and trees, diversity and abundance of native species decrease, which can often give pest and weed an opportunity to strive, as the changes of environment can often favour the interdicted species. Also, because they are competing for the same space, the overall abundance of species decrease. Secondly, with the combination of clear trees and ploughing, the topsoil is exposed. The topsoil has the highest nutrient content and organic matter. However, as there are no roots holding the soil together, weathering and erosion occurs. This decreases the yield of the crop as more money is spent on fertilizers trying to replenish the soil of nitrogen, phosphate and potassium. As native vegetation is removed and is replaced by hard-hooved animals, the ground becomes compacted. As the spaces between the soil particles become compacted, when it rains, the water cannot infiltrate into the soil, which in turn increases water erosion, which means any loose minerals or nutrients the topsoil had washes away. For every country's problem, there are different solutions. For Australia to reach sustainable agriculture, farmers have to take several steps in areas such as minimizing erosion, replenish soils, increase native biodiversity, and decrease soil salinity.
I had no idea that understanding the type of soil that I was using for my farming would impact my crop and yield production. By conducting simple tests to analyse the soil in pH, conductivity, soil nutrients and salinity can really help me in my farming. With these soils, I now know that my soil is lacking in phosphate and nitrate, and now I can use the appropriate fertilisers to enrich my soil.
I lose so much topsoil to wind erosion. I normally use water to keep the topsoil wet, but it's such a precious resource. I need something else that's more cheap and sustainable.
Seeing that there are more options for us farmers gives me a good feeling. If I do my individual part in changing my farming practices to become more sustainable, I am making a difference. This achievement will be a success felt by the wider community. It shouldn't just be meeting the quota or the demands of the consumers, but to produce yields that do not compromise the integrity of the environment.
Another method for decreasing wind erosion is by having bales of hay or plant trees, as they act as windbreaks. By planting trees around the paddock boundaries in columns, slow the wind down and becomes a native habitat corridor. This brings back the native animals back to the area and provides shade for cattle. Also, the money invested into planting native trees can be returned to the farmer, as he can sell his mature trees to companies that support agroforestry and can provide extra income.